All right, we welcome Coach Auriemma to the stage, and we will just go ahead and open it up for questions. Questions for Coach.
Usually when people say you should be on stage, they go, there's one leaving at 8, you should be on.
Geno, Joe's Own, Channel 3 in Hartford. I think you've said that the best way you prepare for these games is you do what you do best. Can you win this game if Oklahoma does what it does best?
Well, that's why they keep score. They're going to obviously not do what they do worst, and neither are we. So I think we've got to play the way we normally play, and we've got to make some adjustments, obviously, like you always do at this time of the year. But their style of play is very, very similar to ours, I think playing at a pace that they play at, I think causes problems for a lot of people, and playing at the pace that we play at causes problems for a lot of people. So it'll be an interesting matchup.
Thanks. Mike Anthony from Hurston, Connecticut. Good morning, Geno. AZ's played really well of late, has shot really well. I'm just wondering what you see in her play lately, what you hope to see in her play, and the kind of the approach she takes to this stage now with her future plans being announced. I don't know if that puts her even more at ease in this situation.
I hope so. Sometimes, these things weigh on players' minds, as they should. It's a big decision, and you want to try to have as few distractions in your head as possible at this time of the year. So having made that decision, clears a few things up for her and hopefully allows her to just focus on playing and doing what she does best. Paige has been in this situation a lot. AZ is not. So I'm sure she's anxious to play in this environment, in a game of this magnitude. And the only thing I worry about when kids are, when it's their first real exposure to this, when they haven't played in a long time, is they try so hard, they put so much into it, So if we can keep it kind of like the other games that we've played recently, I would think she's going to play great.
Lori Riley from the Hartford Courant. Can you just talk about the post matchup and kind of the challenges that it presents for you?
Yeah, their post situation is different. There aren't very many teams in the country that they both happen to. Well, two of them both happen to be here. Them and UCLA. Where they've got a dominant post player that can single-handedly win you a game. And it certainly takes a lot of pressure off your shooters, knowing that, if you're not making a lot of shots on the perimeter, you always got somewhere to go to get a bucket. Certainly the effect that she's had on their team has been tremendous. And on our side, not so much. It's more significant for us when we go to our small lineup and people have to match up with Sarah playing in the middle. So we pose a different sort of problem, but I wouldn't want to have to play 3 or 4 games guarding, Reagan Beers, and I'm not sure anybody wants to have to play against Sarah 4 games in a row. So it'll be interesting.
Hi, Geno. Alexa Filippo, ESPN. I was just curious what your reaction to seeing JuJu's injury was the other day. I know you guys were still at the arena when it happened. And then also just given being around the sport, seeing also what your program has experienced over the last few years, what do you feel like is the best path forward in the women's basketball community to get a better handle, hopefully, on some of these horrible injuries that they're experiencing?
Yeah, we were made aware of it right after our game. I think it was, right? Right after our game. Somebody came in our locker room and wanted to show it to me, and I still haven't seen it. I've seen enough of those in my career. I didn't want to see another one. I talked to Lindsay that night, and there's really nothing you can do about it. I mean, everything's been tried. People try, and there's probably more emphasis than ever before put on prevention. The science behind it and how much time and effort is spent trying to prevent these kinds of things happening. And I don't know what the answer is. Somebody texted me after this happened and said maybe they should do some preventive surgery. Like let's just cut up every kid. And so that's a pretty extreme solution. It's just one of those unfortunate things that happens, and I feel terrible for JuJu personally, knowing the players that I've had to go through that, how much it means to them, what they're missing, for the whole year that they're out. And for Lindsay, and for her teammates. And I think the effect that it has on the tournament, I think, is huge from a competitive standpoint, star power, and I think the USC kids will probably rise to the occasion and play amazing like they did the other night, But I don't know what the solution is. I think when kids come to college, a lot of them are already overused, and I don't know how much that has to do with it. I was talking to Mark Few yesterday, and I think he's talking about the same things. People think that, if you work as hard as Kobe did, you'll be like Kobe. And I don't know that you can work twice as hard as Kobe and you won't be like Kobe. So I think sometimes kids overdo it at a young age and it catches up to them. Among other things, that you can't, biological things you probably can't do anything about.
Ryan Carci, LA Times. Geno, just piggybacking off of that question, what did you say to Lindsay that night afterwards? I know she had mentioned that you had sent a message to her. And as a coach, having gone through this before where you lose a critical player for a long time, what's the biggest challenge in kind of rallying your team going forward, knowing that you might have a different identity?
Yeah, it does change your identity because when you come to rely so much on one player, not because you set out to be that way, it just happens that way. Great players like that just dominate the whole environment on your team. But what ends up happening is one of two things, and I don't know their personnel well enough, off the court. But the danger sometimes is one or two people on the team start to want to be like JuJu. I'll do all the things JuJu did, and then that takes them out of their character, and they play worse. And so the only thing that's helped us in those situations is, you hope you have a couple other really good players, which they do certainly, and that you ask each player to do like that much more, be a little bit more attentive, But anytime, you try to make up for it, it usually backfires. And the other thing is if you're mourning, and that happened to us one year, we lost Shea Ralph. We were undefeated, we're number one in the country. We were by far the best team in America. And the very first game in the NCAA Tournament, she tore ACL on a breakaway layup. Same thing, nobody near her, nothing. And the kids started, they wrote her name on their shoes, and it was like someone had passed away, a family member. And it was the worst thing that ever happened, and we lost. A game we probably shouldn't have lost against a really good team. So I think if you just look at it for what it is, and let's move on, and everybody just do a little bit more. But I think sometimes it's just natural that people want to fill that void. And I hope we're playing them, so I hope they're able to overcome it. I actually hope we're playing them or Kansas State. I just hope we're playing.
Hey, Geno, Annie Peterson from the Associated Press. This is a little bit off topic, but today Doug Bruno announced that he was stepping down after more than 3 decades at DePaul, and I wanted to get your thoughts on his legacy.
I was just talking to him in the hallway over there. It's funny you ask. There haven't been a lot of people in the history of women's basketball that have given as much to the game as he has. He's dedicated his life pretty much to women's basketball. And all of it in Chicago, where he grew up. So he's an institution. I don't think there's a kid in the Midwest, right? You name all the states, I don't care. Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, I don't care. They know someone, or they themselves have been to Doug Bruno's basketball camp over the years. And in his words, he doesn't want to step away, but he knows he has to. And that's somewhat of a relief, I think, knowing that circumstances have forced me into this situation. So it's sad for me personally, because he's a great friend and we've been through a lot together. And sad for women's basketball that a lifelong supporter of the game isn't going to be coaching, but he'll still be a supporter of the game. And happy for Patty, his wife, and his kids and grandkids, because they'll get to see more of him.
We have time for 2 more questions.
We'll go to Chantel and then we'll come.
Hey, Geno. Chantel Jennings with The Athletic. This isn't the first year you guys have had the transfer portal open during the tournament. Obviously, the timing has changed a little bit. I'm curious, as a staff, how you sort of deal with being pulled in multiple directions that are both vital for the growth of your program, and then sort of more broadly, if you had a magic wand, is there a better time for this? Is it a football response where they have 2 windows that sort of allows changes?
Yeah, there's just a lot of things going on right now that take away, I think, some of the focus of the players, some of the focus of the coaches. Obviously, the portal has become a big cloud that hangs over everything. For instance, do you think the NBA will ever have open free agency during the NBA playoffs? I doubt that, right? It's got to be sometime after all this is over, right? It's got to be when the schools have finished playing. There's got to be some sort of way to track and monitor and penalize tampering like there is in the NBA. there's got to be a guideline of what you can do in free agency, which is basically what it is. The 2 windows, yeah, I'm in favor for anything that doesn't interfere with what you're trying to do as a coach with your team, you know? Even though I think players on every team that's playing in the tournament have already decided I'm either staying or I'm leaving. But it's never been harder to, you know, at least in the pros, you know who's under contract and who's a free agent. It's very difficult to live in an environment where every single kid on every team throughout the country, on all 350-some Division I teams, is a free agent. So I hope everybody that came up with this plan is really happy. You know?
Maggie Benoni, CT Insider. I know you've talked about it before. This is your guys' 3rd year out here for the regional on the West Coast. But going ahead to next week, you know, the 2 winners out of this regional will have a cross-country trip to Tampa. Just what is your thoughts on that quick turnaround on top of the cross-country trip?
Well, first of all, there's always going to be somebody that has to travel who's ever in the West region when the finals are on the East Coast. And vice versa. So somebody's always going to have to travel. But it would only be 1 team, correct? 1 team. Secondly, in a normal world, run by normal people, there would only be 4 teams here, which means there would be no games today. The games would be tomorrow, which means we wouldn't have to get up at 6 a.m. to have a 8 o'clock practice here this morning for an hour, which means we wouldn't have to get up at 5 a.m. to have a 7:30 shoot around for half an hour, take us longer to get through security than to actually be on the court. Okay? God bless whoever wins Monday night, okay? And they've got to fly cross country, which is all day Tuesday. Then they have 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday, to play the biggest game of their life. The guys who don't know shit about shit, according to a lot of women's basketball people, they finish Sunday, then they have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and they play Saturday. But there's a lot of people on the women's basketball committee that think they're smarter than that. So whoever came up with this super regional stuff, and I know who they are, ruined the game. They did, they ruined the game. Half the country has no chance to get to a game in person. But you're making billions off of TV. Well, actually, you're not. That would be the men's tournament. So yeah, there's a lot of issues that they need to fix. And again, we could get our ass beat tomorrow, and that won't change my feelings.